Ever read like a book report and, it makes you think, kind of want to check out that book.
Well, that's what happened to me when I was reading Ronnie Garagos's. Well, it's less of a book report and more like just her analysis of this book, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. And, we're not going to like recap the whole plot. That's not what this deep dive is about. It's more about like how Rania sees the story. She brings a really unique perspective.
Yeah, she does. What's interesting is that
Yeah.
Rania doesn't treat this book like, just a simple mystery. She
Yeah.
really gets into like the main character, Christopher. He's a boy with autism. And she kind of uses his unique way of looking at the world to like explore these themes, like friendship, love, and even justice.
That's cool. Okay, so let's get into this. So Rania starts by, giving us the basics.
Mhm.
Christopher finds his neighbor's dog dead. And of course, he sets out to find the killer, but she moves pretty quickly beyond like the whodunit to, analyze like what makes Christopher tick. And she highlights how his autism, especially his sensory sensitivities, really shape how he sees the world. Right. And she points out how those sensitivities can be like both a challenge and a strength. For example, Christopher is really easily overwhelmed by like loud noises and crowds, which makes, like navigating social situations tough for him. But on the other hand, he's like incredibly attuned to visual details, details most people wouldn't even notice. And this heightened awareness plays a key role in his investigation.
I love that. That's such a cool observation. It's like Renani is inviting us to like step inside Christopher's mind and like experience the world through his senses, which leads to some really insightful analysis of the themes.
Definitely. Take friendship, for example. Renee points out that Christopher, he has a limited number of friends, but those relationships are like super powerful to him, really meaningful. And she argues that, this might reflect a larger truth about connection, like that the depth of a bond is often more important than, like the quantity of relationships.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like she's challenging this idea that we need like a ton of friends to, feel fulfilled, quality over quantity, right?
Yeah.
And then she goes on to tackle love, which is really interesting
Mhm.
because Christopher, he doesn't experience or express love in the same way like neurotypical people do.
Exactly. Rinia delves into how, Christopher's very literal way of thinking
Hmm.
and his difficulty understanding, those social cues influence his perception of love. For him, love is about logic and consistency, which can make his relationships with others, even with his parents, pretty complex.
It makes you wonder if like Renia's own understanding of love is shaped by seeing it through Christopher's unique perspective.
That's a really good point. By analyzing a character so different from herself, Rinia is kind of forced to confront her own assumptions about what love means.
And then there's justice. Rania picks up on this idea that Christopher, with his black and white thinking, has a really strong sense of right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
How does his literal worldview connect to his pursuit of justice?
Well, Rania suggests that for Christopher. Finding the truth about the dog's death isn't just about solving a puzzle, it's about restoring order. To a world that suddenly feels chaotic and unpredictable, he needs to find the culprit because,
Right.
in his mind, that's the only way to like make things right again.
It's like he needs that concrete resolution to feel safe again. Ryan is really tapped into something profound there, but she doesn't stop at analyzing the characters and themes. She also digs into the author's style, which I found super interesting.
What's remarkable is how Rania, even at her age, picks up on these subtle ways that Haddon uses language. To convey Christopher's internal world, she points out the recurring motifs of red and yellow and how they connect to his emotional state. Red often represents, anger or anxiety, while yellow signifies happiness or calmness.
It's like a secret code embedded in the text, and it makes you pay attention to details you might have otherwise missed.
Exactly. Rania also highlights the use of like diagrams and maps throughout the book. She argues that these visual elements aren't just there to illustrate the story, they actually reflect Christopher's way of processing information and making sense of the world around him.
It's a reminder that form and content are intertwined, and that sometimes the way a story is told is just as important as the story itself.
Couldn't agree more. Rania's analysis shows a deep understanding of how these literary techniques can enhance a narrative and deepen our understanding of the characters.
And it's not just the style that Rania dives into. She also touches on the historical and cultural context of the book, specifically how it tackled a topic that wasn't widely discussed in the early 2000s, autism.
This is a crucial point. Rania astutely observes how curious incident emerged during a time when autism was largely misunderstood and often misrepresented in popular culture. She highlights how Haddon's choice to narrate the story from Christopher's perspective challenged those prevailing stereotypes and helped humanize the autistic experience for a wider audience.
It's like she's saying, hey, this book wasn't just a good read. It made a real impact on how people viewed autism.
Precisely. And Rania, being a young reader herself, seems to grasp the significance of this. She recognizes that stories have the power to shape our understanding of the world and ourselves.
Which brings us to what I think is the most important takeaway from Rania's analysis, the moral of the story. She sees Curious Incident as a powerful call for understanding and empathy.
Absolutely. Rania argues that the book encourages us to move beyond our own limited perspectives and try to see the world through the eyes of others, especially those who experience it differently than we do.
And she demonstrates that empathy in her own writing, wouldn't you say?
Without a doubt, Rania doesn't shy away from Christopher's differences. She embraces them. She celebrates his unique perspective and encourages us to do the same.
It's like she's embodying the very message of the book. In her own analysis, she's not just telling us about Christopher, she's inviting us to learn from him.
And that's what makes Rania's paper so remarkable. It's not just a well-written analysis of a book. It's a testament to the power of empathy and understanding, to bridge the gap between different ways of experiencing the world.
It makes you wonder what else Rania will uncover as she continues to explore literature and the world around her.
I'm certainly eager to see what insights she brings to future deep dives.
Like he needs that to feel safe again. You know?
Yeah.
That concrete resolution, Rania's really tapped into something profound there. But it doesn't stop with, analyzing the characters and the themes. She also digs into the author's style, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's remarkable how Rania, even at her age, picks up on these really subtle ways that Haddon uses language to convey, Christopher's internal world. She points out the recurring motifs of red and yellow and how they connect to his emotional state. Red often represents anger or anxiety, while yellow signifies happiness or calmness.
Oh, wow. So it's like a secret code hidden in the text. And it makes you pay attention to these details. You know that you might have missed otherwise.
Exactly. And Rania also highlights the use of diagrams and maps throughout the book. And she argues that those visual elements, they're not just there to illustrate the story. They actually reflect Christopher's way of processing information and making sense of the world around him.
It reminds me that form and content are, intertwined. And that sometimes the way a story is told is just as important as the story itself.
Yeah, I totally agree. Rania's analysis shows a really deep understanding of how those literary techniques enhance the narrative and deepen our understanding of the characters.
And it's not just the style. Rania also touches on the historical and cultural context of the book, specifically how it tackled the topic. That wasn't widely discussed, back in the early 2000s. Autism.
Right. This is a crucial point. Rania observes how Curious Incident came out during a time when autism was largely misunderstood and often misrepresented in pop culture. She highlights how Haddon's choice to narrate the story from Christopher's point of view really challenged those prevailing stereotypes and helped humanize the autistic experience for a wider audience.
So it's like she's saying, hey, this book wasn't just a good read. It actually had a real impact on how people saw autism.
Exactly. And Rania, being a young reader herself, she seems to really grasp the significance of that. She recognizes that stories can shape our understanding of the world and ourselves.
Which leads us to what I think is the most important takeaway from Rania's analysis, the moral of the story. She sees Curious Incident as a powerful call for understanding and empathy.
Absolutely. Rania argues that the book encourages us to move beyond our own, limited perspectives and try to see the world through the eyes of other people, especially people who experience it differently from us.
And she demonstrates that empathy in her own writing, don't you think?
Without a doubt. Rania doesn't shy away from Christopher's differences. She embraces them. She celebrates his unique way of seeing things and encourages us to do the same.
So she's embodying the message of the book. In her own analysis, she's not just telling us about Christopher, she's inviting us to learn from him.
And that's what makes Rania's paper so remarkable. It's not just a well-written analysis. It's a testament to the power of empathy and understanding, to bridge that gap between different ways of experiencing the world.
It makes you wonder what else Rania will discover as she continues to explore literature and the world.
I'm excited to see what insights she'll bring to, future deep dives.
What does this all mean for you? Dear listener, we spent this deep dive, exploring Rania's insights on Curious Incidents. But the real question is, how does her analysis change your perspective on the book? Or even on the world around you?
Well, that's the beauty of a deep dive like this, Rania provides a framework for understanding Christopher and his journey. But she also encourages us to go beyond her interpretation and, find our own meaning in the story.
Exactly. She's not giving us all the answers right. She's starting a conversation. Remember how she connected Christopher's literal thinking to his sense of justice? That got me thinking about how our own cognitive styles, even our neurodiversity, might shape our own moral compass.
That's a really fascinating question. Do we all define justice in the same way? Or do our individual experiences and ways of processing information influence our understanding of right and wrong?
It's like Rani has opened a door to a whole new way of looking at this book, and maybe even at ourselves. And she did it by tapping into something we all have, our own unique perspective.
Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that even a young student can offer really profound insights if we just take the time to listen and engage with their ideas.
So here's a final thought-provoking question for you. If you were to write about the Curious Incident, what theme or character would you focus on? And how would your own perspective, your own life experiences, shape your interpretation?
I encourage you to pick up a copy of the book, or, revisit it if it's been a while, and see where your own deep dive takes you.
Rania's analysis has given us all a glimpse into the rich layers of meaning in this story, but there's always more to discover. Happy reading and happy exploring at